Good evening, everybody. Can everyone hear me? Fantastic. Well done, everyone, for making it. I feel like giving you all the Duke of Edinburgh Award for battling through the weather to get here tonight. So well done. Fantastic to see you all. A very warm welcome to all of you here in the room, and of course all of you who are joining us online this evening for this wonderful event. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Pradeep Passy. I am the Associate Pro Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity and Inclusion here at the University of Salford. My role is all about accelerating the university's work in equity, diversity and inclusion. And in fact, we have set ourselves some quite ambitious targets around that to achieve by 2028, which is contained in our EDI statement of ambition, which was recently launched. And one of those goals is to increase the proportion of women in senior roles here at the university, including the proportion of professors who are women. So I'm really pleased that this event is taking place. It's very apt, it's very timely for us, and very much aligns with our ambitions here at the university. This event is about celebrating the inspirational journey of one of our Salford Business School graduates, Jeanette Gamble. She's looking very humble at the moment at the front. And Jeanette is a trailblazer for women in technology, beginning her career at Morgan Stanley as a graduate trainee in their analyst programme. Am I allowed to say this? 23 years ago? Yeah. Throughout her time there, she has held roles in technology and finance, gaining expertise in enterprise computing, application development, quality assurance, production management, finance and enterprise crisis management. Someone from the sort of social sciences doesn't understand any of that. Jeanette also actively promotes gender equality within Morgan Stanley and co-leads the Gender Diversity and Women in Tech initiatives. As one of Morgan Stanley's youngest female managing directors, she believes in defying limitations and encourages others to pursue their aspirations. Jeanette dedicates her time to mentoring and supporting women and girls in technology, serving as an Honorary International Industry Fellow at Salford Business School and participating in various outreach programmes and initiatives. Her journey from University of Salford to becoming a managing director at Morgan Stanley serves as an inspiring example for our students, many of whom are here today. Fantastic to see you all. And she is committed to guiding the next generation of professionals. In recognition of this commitment, we are delighted to have awarded Jeanette the Alumni Lifetime Achievement Award in our annual Alumni Achievement Awards last night. Speaking with Jeanette this evening is our very own trailblazer, Janet Allen, who is the Dean of Salford Business School, an education leader whose commitment to providing an outstanding experience for our students and encouraging them to succeed in and outside the classroom is also an inspiration to us all. And having worked with Janice very closely over the last 12 months or so, I noticed that she is also very committed to dismantling barriers and advancing equity, both here at the university and in her work externally. So this evening, we're going to get into a conversation style. Janice is going to be leading that interview and conversation with Jeanette. And we're going to hear some meaningful advice, some inspirational stories, and some Salford-born professional connections. Together, our alumni, staff and students can ensure that the legacy of excellence and the spirit of Salford continues to thrive. I'm now going to hand over to Janice and lead Jeanette to the interview table, and maybe we can show our appreciation for our speakers tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everybody for coming tonight and for all of you who are joining us online. It's a very busy time of the year and we're very, very pleased to actually see you here. And I have no doubt that you will think it worth the trip because Jeanette truly is inspirational. Jeanette, it's been, 23 years since you were last at Salford. You came back, you've had a tour of campus. What does it feel like to be back here?
I mean, I definitely had some nostalgic moments, especially around some of the drinking establishments from my university days. One of my best friends that I met at university is in the audience, Melina. I mean, it was really emotional. Frances Bell, who is in the audience, you know, I spoke about Frances yesterday, and, you know, when I came to the university, so much stuff had happened in the previous 3 years of my life, and you know, I wasn't all together in terms of what I wanted to do and how I was going to get through university. And I think just meeting someone like Frances, I'm going to try not to cry. I mean, it really changed my life. Just having somebody believe in me and give me the resources and guide me and mentor me. You know, I really attribute a huge amount of my career and getting into Morgan Stanley to everything that she had done for me while I was here. So I wanted to kind of kick this off really in recognition of her because, you know, I said last night, you know, when you find a teacher or a dean or a lecturer that, you know, really grabs you and believes in you, I mean, it can really change your life. So I think we should all give a round of applause to Frances.
Thank you on behalf of all students, because I always hear the same story about your teaching. Right, to set the scene, as it were, for the whole conversation, can you tell us about your journey from first year University of Salford student to where you are today, youngest MD at Morgan Stanley?
So I'll be honest, like the first year at university was really mixed for me. It was at a point where, you know, Salford was potentially merging with the business school. And when I'd read about, you know, business information systems, you know, one of the things that really gravitated me towards the university was that I was going to learn from people in the industry and that, you know, I was going to get a lot of background in terms of people who had worked in the field and now had become lecturers. And so when I came, that merger hadn't happened yet. And so, you know, it was very much the first year was very much, you know, sitting in the lecture room and just learning out of a textbook. And that really did not work well with me. It didn't make me excited about learning or gravitate to kind of want to overachieve. And then everything changed in the second year. You know, that merger happened. We had people from the consulting firms coming in and talking to us. We had the Manchester Police telling us about computer security and auditing, and just hearing from people who had actually had jobs in those fields. I mean, that's where it all changed for me. And I became so excited about all of the different opportunities that I thought that I could have. You know, we didn't really do much tech in our course. It was very theoretical. And so I hadn't actually wanted to go into technology. You know, I wanted to do business analytics. I was really interested in data and data analytics. And so, you know, after applying to a million companies, you know, Morgan Stanley offered me a role on their business and analytics track. And I was so excited. And then a week before the track was supposed to start, they called me up and they said, we're actually canceling that track. We're not doing it anymore. But we're going to put you on, you know, the coding track, the distributed development track. And so I was petrified because I basically said to them, you know, I haven't done any coding. And so how am I ever going to get through that? And they're like, don't worry about it. You know, we'll teach you everything you need to know. So I start this analyst training program and I'm in a classroom with 40 other students, all who have done 4 years of computer science. And it was really intense, and it was
That sounds scary.
it was really scary. And it was at a time where there'd been a massive boom in the finance sector, and then there was a crash. And so you had to get class averages in the tests each month to be able to get to the next part. And so that's really when the whole kind of thinking about alumni and thinking about coming back here, my entire class really was just willing for me to get through it. And so people would tutor me at night, people would tutor me at the weekends. And so I didn't really see any of my friends, and I cried a lot during that 3 months to get through it. But, you know, it was one of those things, the more people told me, you know, I remember getting pulled aside by someone in HR, and they said, I don't know if this is the right thing for you. Like, I don't think you're ever going to be the best at this. And I think having someone tell me that I couldn't do it and I couldn't succeed put this fire inside me that I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to prove you wrong. And everybody that told me that I couldn't do it no longer work at the firm. So it made me feel really, really good that I lasted everybody. So yeah, you know, it was really tough. It was a lot of grit. It was a lot of studying. But it was really worth it coming out of it. I was definitely like a wounded animal that was kind of licking my wounds by the end of it, and kind of lost a bit of my confidence. Having that many people tell me that, you know, maybe it wasn't the right thing for me, but I feel really glad that I stuck through it.
I think that in itself is a testimonial to your character. I remember in high school, I'd done badly in one maths test, and this teacher came up to me and said, I was really surprised to see that you were on the maths honor roll last year. And instead of saying, right, I'm going to prove you wrong, I thought, fine, maths be damned. And really didn't sort of engage with it again. And that was such a negative response. So you've actually done the right thing and just sort of said, no, I'm going to show everybody what to do. I'm going to do it. That's fantastic. Was there anything specific in your studies at Salford that you think had a big influence on your career? What sort of stands out for you in terms of, yep, that's what I took with me?
I mean, I definitely think meeting people in the industry and understanding, you know, really what those jobs were going to be like and what type of roles and careers I was going to have. I think that was the main turning point for me. You know, just getting excited about, you know, potentially working for those companies and the opportunities that would bring, you know, getting to travel, you know, and just listening to them and, you know, hearing their journey and coming to sessions like this, I think was really, really important. I honestly think the biggest thing was you know, the people that I met here. You know, I met some of my greatest friends at Salford University, and we basically, all of us, there was like a mass exodus, and we all moved to London together after we graduated. And some people moved back, and some people moved to different countries, but we all stayed connected. And I think having that cohort of people, you know, when you went through things in your jobs or your career was really, really important.
Yeah. It's interesting for anybody who doesn't know, industry collaboration is still the single strategic priority for the University of Salford. But it's really interesting to hear that that was real 23 years ago. Yeah. It's fantastic because we often talk about our DNA going back to the Industrial Revolution, but it really has been this, you know, North Star for the institution for a very long time. Now, you have been so successful in your career, but can you think of an example in your professional life where something didn't go well, where you experienced something that might be likened to failure? How did you cope with that, and what lessons did you learn from that?
I mean, there's been so many, you know, some people ask me, do I have any regrets? And I'm the type of person that I don't look back and regret anything because I've made some horrific mistakes. Like I remember, so I was in London, and then I went to New York to set up this massive team, and then I moved to Hong Kong. And so I get to Hong Kong, and I'm running this huge command center where really, when really bad technology problems happen, my team would swoop in and try and fix it really fast to avoid losing firm money. And I remember being on this call and we'd had a horrific incident. And I took a piece of hardware, I took the host name and put it in the wrong chat room, and it took down all of FX trading for Asia. And I remember just like feeling like I was going to throw up. And I get up from my desk, and the head of Asia walked over to my desk, and she took me for like a loop around the shopping center. And she was like, this is one of these moments where, you know, you need to have integrity. You need to go on that bridge. You need to admit what you've done, and you need to move on. And I ended up like on the way back. So she left me to walk around the shopping center like one loop, and I called my dad. And I was like, oh, I was like crying. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna get fired. And so I get back on this call, and the guy's name Boj, he was head of FX trading. And I basically just admitted what I did. I said, look, I've done this. I'll stay on the call until everything's kind of cleared up. And I mean, that guy became a fierce advocate of me and was one of my sponsors for managing director, you know, 20 years later. And so I think the key thing is that there's going to be a lot of things that you mess up or you do wrong. But I think when you have the integrity to say, look, I did this, and you learn from it, I think that was a big learning experience. And I was glad it happened at the early part of my career, because it really showed me that hiding things that you do wrong or not learning from things that you've done wrong, you know, could be pretty detrimental to your career. You know, I definitely think that mentors, like I've probably had, I'm going to say around 50 different mentors at Morgan Stanley. And so one of the things that I normally do is, you know, we have a official mentorship program where you can basically request a mentor and they pair you like online dating. And for anybody who's done online dating, I mean, you have to go through a lot of people before you click with someone. And so, I mean, being paired up with a mentor, it just didn't work for me. And so instead, what I would do is I would go to sessions like this or town halls and listen to senior people talking. And then I would send them an email and say, you know, you spoke about managing people remotely, or you seem to know a lot about this specific piece of infrastructure. You know, is there any way you would be willing to be my mentor? And I think one of the great things about Morgan Stanley is when people know things, they love talking about it. So nobody ever turned me down. And so as I jumped into different roles, I would headhunt someone who knew that really, really well. And I would ask them to be my mentor, and just was really bold and cocky to just walk into their office and ask them to give me that time. I think the other thing, like when I was going through the training program, you know, a lot of people got frustrated with me because I didn't know how to code and they all did. And so sometimes I would hold the class back because I would ask so many questions. And so, you know, part of me could have just shut down and felt insecure about that. But I just felt, you know what, I want to get through this program, and I belong here just as much as anybody else belongs here. And so rather, I just blocked out all the noise, and I would continuously put my hand up and ask questions, even when I could see people's faces just being like, ask another question. So I think when you really want something, you know, and be passionate about it, I think, you know, just having a belief in yourself that, you know, you don't listen to all the noise and just go for your goal, I think was definitely something that I really, really stuck with throughout my career.
Yeah. I remember reading something just last week that was saying people will forgive a mistake. They're much slower to forgive a lapse in integrity. So that idea of, yeah, I've got this wrong, but I'm standing up, I'm owning, I'm taking the blame for it and the responsibility for it, and I'll work to make it better.
Yeah.
I think that's so much better. Coming back, a supplementary question about mentoring. There's a podcast that I love. It's called Coaching for Leaders. It was talking about mentors in an episode that I was listening to recently. And it was a man who's often asked to be a mentor. And he said one of his frustrations is somebody begs him to be a mentor and then shows up at the meeting almost unprepared and sort of says, so what do I do? You know, and so how, because I imagine a lot of people in the audience were thinking, I could really use a mentor, but what should we do in advance of our first meeting with a mentor to really make a good impression and to make sure it's a kind of two-way conversation and dialogue?
I mean, it's when you first do it, it's really awkward. Like it really is like going out on a date, and you're kind of worried that you're wasting this person's time. B, you're worried that you're going to ask questions that maybe they just don't find useful. And so I remember my first mentor, and he was really, really senior. I turned up at Morgan Stanley and they let me join early. I was a pre-trainee. And this woman just came over to my desk and said, can you back, it was like, you can tell how old I am. It was like manual paper pay slips. And she said, can you hand out the pay slips? It's like 100 pay slips. And most kids, you know, who were kind of cocky and it came from the best schools would have said, why would I do that? Like, surely there's a person to do that. And I remember looking at this person, I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to meet 100 people at Morgan Stanley today. And I literally spent the whole day like going around each person and I asked them 2 questions. What do you love doing? Like, what technology do you love working with? And what do you hate working with? And it's like at the end of that week, I had 100 people I knew who loved doing web development. I knew who loved working, you know, programming in Java. And so I had this insane network of people when I would have a problem that I could go to. And so this day there was a door open, it was this big corner office, and there was a guy sitting in there. And I remember just bouncing into his office and I could see everybody just like literally outside the door being gasping, like, oh, what's she doing? And it was like, you know, back then the percentage of managing directors at Morgan Stanley was so tiny that this guy was like the one. There was maybe 3 in Europe. And I went into his office and looked at him and I was like, hey, how's your day going? And he was like, you know, I don't think anybody's asked me that in a really long time. And I just sat down, I told him who I was, and I said, oh, you know, if I have any questions, like, would you be able to, you know, would you be willing to mentor me? I mean, he knows my husband, he's met my daughter, like we still kept in touch, like he doesn't work at Morgan anymore. But he said to me, because I said, oh, you know, I feel really insecure about wasting your time. And he said, every time I talk to you, he was like, I find out something unique that's happening either on the floor or something that you're struggling with. I feel like it's not just you, other people are struggling with it. And he said, I feel like I learn a lot. And I think just having someone tell me that at the beginning, you know, we would sit down and I would be prepared. You know, I would list out, you know, the things that I really needed help with, whether it was managing a person or a specific piece of technology or just some random politics. And I think once I got to the point that we had a good relationship, then it would be like, I'm dealing with this difficult person and how do I navigate that? And so, you know, it would be on me to put the time in his calendar. It would be on me to like kick off the conversation. But it kind of became a conversation, less, you know, kind of here's my 5 questions and more of how's your career going? How's your week going? So I think that's the key of finding someone that you click with so you can kind of have that relationship with. You know, some mentors I picked, it was because they knew when I moved into infrastructure and I'd been a developer and not a very good developer. And I realized that I was never going to be the best computer programmer. And I got offered a job to run, you know, a data infrastructure team. And I again called my dad. He was like what is that show called where you have to phone a friend?
Yep.
In the UK, he was my phone a friend. And so I remember calling him and I was just like, I have no idea why they've asked me to run this group. And I was just like, I don't know anything about data infrastructure. And he said, Jeanette, there has to be a reason why they picked you for this. Like, they're not just picking you for no reason. And so they had a firm belief that anything that they needed to teach you, they could teach you. And it wasn't about the technology. You could pick up any technology. It was really about you as a person. And so when I knew I was doing that, I hunted down this guy who was like the best database expert in the firm and asked him to mentor me. And once a week, he would like whiteboard, you know, the infrastructure and how databases worked and how performance and tuning worked. And I mean, it was just amazing. And the fact that so many people across this firm invested so much time in me as passing it on was really phenomenal. So, I mean, honestly don't think I would still be at Morgan Stanley if it wasn't for the mentors that I had, because when I definitely had crossroads where I thought, should I leave? You know, I really had such a strong group of people who talked me through, you know, potentially why I was leaving and helped me navigate out of that specific problem.
That's fantastic. I love that example of handing out the pay slips and your attitude towards that, which could have gone one of either 2 ways. I would describe that as an entrepreneurial mindset or, you know, a growth mindset. What does that term mean to you, growth mindset or entrepreneurial mindset?
I mean, you know, when you think about what I did in that scenario, and I talk to a lot of the trainees and the grads that come in, You know, I always believe there's a reason why you're getting a specific task. And, you know, I remember working for a manager who, you know, I was an incident manager. So basically I would get on these like technical bridges and fix problems really quick because my mind just like, you know, I multitask really well. And they put me reporting into this woman called Bonnie Peel, who was amazing, but she wasn't a good incident manager. And I remember going to my mentor and saying, I have no idea why I'm working for this person. Like, you know, I don't feel that they can add me any value. And, you know, he basically said to me, he was like, they might not be able to add value for that specific thing, but they're in that role for a reason, and it's your job to find out why they're your manager. And so it was really humbling for me to kind of, you know, in that moment of being cocky and arrogant, to basically be humbled again, and to really get to know this person and find out. And, you know, my mentor said, you know, think of your bag of tricks. Like, what is your technical bag of tricks? Write down all of the things that you're good at: vendor management, you know, a technical programming language, you know, communication, and think about what's not in your bag of tricks and what does that person have in their bag of tricks that you want to learn. And so yeah, so I think, you know, working in a corporate company, you know, in terms of your entrepreneurial mindset, I think you should, you know, you should never assume, you know, and always look at a person as a wealth of information and figure out what you're going to learn from them, rather than, you know, shutting yourself off and assuming that you know everything or you're the best at everything, because you end up closing yourself off from just all of this information and all of these skills that you could have learned from someone.
That is a fantastic takeaway for all the students in the audience. Go home, think about what is my bag of tricks, write that down, and then actually look at the careers you want and say, now what's missing from my bag of tricks? What is it that I need to actually work on? I think that's something we can all sort of take away and look at. Now, this question, we actually did this in the school for the beginning of the year. What would you tell your 18-year-old self based on what you know now? So we did a whole thing for our new students at the in the school, this one, and it was things like, you don't have to ask to go to the bathroom. You don't call them ma'am and sir when you're at university. You just call them by their first name, that sort of thing. So what one piece of advice, probably a bit more highbrow and sophisticated than the examples I've just given, would you give? What advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
I mean, this is a really complicated question for me because, you know, I feel that, you know, from being the age of 18 to now, you know, I've definitely made some horrific mistakes. I've definitely done, you know, I've approached things in certain ways, or, you know, I definitely was a bit of an I was going to say alcoholic, workaholic, definitely not an alcoholic. A workaholic, and there were certain events and family things, you know, things to do with my friends where a big work event was happening or there was a deadline, and so I would definitely tell my 18-year-old self that work is work. That when you wake up in the morning, nobody died today, you know, and if that's your bar, you know, that people are more important than work. And so yeah, so I would definitely tell my 18-year-old self that work is always going to be there, and that, you know, you really need to put, you know, a lot of your heart and soul into your family and your friends and make sure you're there for them when they need you the most.
That's fantastic advice. I would also say that you are probably better at work when you've looked after yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you need to be firing on all cylinders to be, for example, an inclusive leader, to be able to pause and take the time and look at things carefully, look at things from different perspectives. And it's really hard to do that when you feel like you're kind of on a treadmill and just dealing with one issue after another. So I think self-care is incredibly important in terms of leadership. Okay, I'm going to change tacks a little bit. One of the aspects of your work that really inspires me, and I know will inspire members of the audience, is your work as a board member for Girls Who Code. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work of the organization and why it's so important?
I mean, it's a phenomenal nonprofit. You know, I was pregnant with my daughter, and I just had her. I was on maternity leave. And to be honest, I was kind of, you know, going from being this like, you know, powerhouse at work to, you know, being a mom. I kind of was like, oh my goodness, like, I'm really not good at this. And so I kind of reached out to some networks, and there's this woman, who was doing, she's running a big conference, a women's conference called the She Summit in New York City. And I had bought a ticket to go to her conference, introduced myself to her, and she introduced me to Reshma Sanjani, who was the previous head CEO of Girls Who Code, who now runs Moms First in America. And we had this conversation about Girls Who Code, and I was like, why is Morgan Stanley not a sponsor? And so I kind of went back to my company and set the place on fire about why we weren't sponsoring this, given how amazing it was. From they started, they have introduced over 600,000 girls into coding and computer science fields and jobs. It's such my heart is just pounding, with excitement, just even talking about it. Really it's over in the States. It launched in the UK 2 years ago. We have programs in India that we launched, and really it's about the summer immersion programs. COVID was horrific on so many levels, but one beautiful thing that came out of COVID was we normally did these summer immersion programs in our offices. So, 20 to 30 girls would come into the Morgan Stanley offices, and like how amazing, we would put their faces up on the Times Square billboard, and they would have Morgan Stanley on their resumes, and they came from minority backgrounds, from low income housing, really did not have much. We would give them laptops, we would do this summer program, and we basically donate to Girls Who Code. It's a nonprofit, and their teachers do the whole program, and we'll just do guest speaking events, or kind of help them with resume reviews and things like that. And then COVID happened, and it all went online, and we got an insight. So one of the beautiful things that came out of it was, instead of having 20 girls, now we had 80 girls. And it was on Zoom. So, obviously you don't have that face-to-face interaction, which is priceless. However, when we started talking to these girls, they were coming from homes where their entire family was in a one-bedroom apartment, and in the classroom they had blurred background because they were sitting in a fire escape, with a laptop that we had shipped to them. They didn't have Wi-Fi, so we were having to work with like Spectrum and Verizon in the United States to make sure that they had Wi-Fi in their home. They had nothing. And so I remember being at a session in Montreal and meeting some of the parents of the kids who had been through this program. And it not only changed their lives, but it changed their parents' lives, because all of a sudden they had this child who now was working for a company, bringing in an income that they could have never imagined that they would ever bring in. And it just was life-changing. And I think, and when you look at, some of the things that they would develop in this short summer program, like they were developing apps where it linked to universities and financial institutions, and if kids were under a certain amount of money in their bank account, it all of a sudden linked them to mental health apps and things to basically manage stress and how to manage their finances. Some of the things that these kids were creating was just like mind-blowing. Like I was working in French Connection, at the Trafford Center during my internship. Like I wasn't making an app. And so when you think about the fact that you give these kids the opportunity to learn, basic programming skills, or not even programming skills, just teach them how to build an app or build a web page, and what they do with that, it's pretty amazing. And I think the reason only 24% of computer science roles globally are women, and only 5% are women of color. And so when you think about those numbers, pretty staggering, just starting to change people's mindsets. It's like, it's really hard for me to find women. I was just at Grace Hopper in Orlando, and there was 200,000 women there who all knew technology. It is not hard to find women. And so it's really, they not only offer these programs, but they embed themselves in companies to change the culture and to change the mindset. You can see how passionate I am about it.
It's just extraordinary, that work. I'm very envious of you having the privilege to make that kind of difference. Now, one of the challenges that we face in the UK exactly in addressing the imbalance and the lack of diversity within the tech sector is that the school curriculum, even for those taking a GCSE in computer science, taking an A level in computer science, is that it does not align with real world practice. It does not give them the skills, and it cannot keep up with the pace of digital transformation. Is that an issue in the US as well?
It's exactly the same in the US. Like we were just, we were talking about this in Girls Who Code. Over 60% of high schools in the United States do not have good computer science programs, and the ones that they do are so old and out of date that it really, doesn't benefit the students. It's hard because when you have, I'm obviously in New York City, and so, we basically, when companies invest in the city, so we sponsor a high school program at Stuyvesant, we sponsor a high school program at Bergen County in New Jersey. And so when you have companies that sponsor these programs, so we bring the high school students into Morgan Stanley, we teach them everything they need to know. And so, the problem with that is that, those schools tend to be the schools where, they have families who have a lot of money who are investing in those schools. And so then you get to the point, that we were talking about, where there's a select group of kids who are going to benefit, and then the majority of kids aren't benefiting. So there definitely is an uprising in the United States right now. A lot of the stuff that Reshma Samjani has been doing, really to change and think about the curriculums. So we're pretty much going through the same thing that you're going through. And I think the biggest thing in the United States is that there's a huge shortage of teachers who can teach computer science. And when they get the teachers into the schools in the States, they basically have to create their own curriculum because there's nothing for them to go on. So we've been definitely spending a huge amount of time with, the lower income schools in New York State and running code clubs. So we launched 3 kids coding clubs where people from Morgan Stanley basically in the evening or at weekends will basically run these little, online programs. And so we do them with schools. So I think it's sad that we have to do that. But I think a lot of the stuff coming out of the White House now and things that Tarika Barrett, who now is the CEO of Girls Who Code, like we're starting to see some change in that, but it's taking a really long time.
One of the really exciting things that's going on in Manchester at the moment, because of Manchester has devolved powers with Andy Burnham. And one of the things he's proposing is an MBAC, Manchester Baccalaureate. I think it should be called DBAC, the Digital Baccalaureate. But the most radical thing about it is that he is recognizing that digital skills are of equal importance to English and maths in terms of those fundamentals. And that's such a key, important recognition. I'm desperately hoping that that gains traction and goes ahead. Do you think inclusivity and diversity and equity are things improving in the business and tech spheres? What sort of changes have you seen over the course of your career?
They're definitely improving. I think I walked into a company, and when I looked at my training program, it was really rare. 50% of my trainees were, women. When I started at Morgan Stanley, if I look at my direct reports, over 50% of them are women. And that's partly because I'm pretty passionate about it, but we basically got to gender parity on our graduate training program 2 years ago, which is amazing. I definitely think it has changed. I think the sad part is I think we were at 28% and then COVID happened, and a lot of the burden in terms of 2 parents working at home and the kids were doing remote learning, I think that put a lot of pressure, and we basically took a massive step back, and we saw a lot of women leaving the corporate world, and a lot of women just leaving because they really enjoyed working from home. And a lot of companies, it was kind of that skit. There was an SNL skit where Saturday Night Live, sorry, where, you know, the person was really excited, being like, oh my goodness, during COVID, I find this amazing house and it's like 2 hours out of the city. And he's like, oh, amazing. I'm so excited for you. You're going to have so much outdoor space, enjoy working from home. And then cut to COVID and it's all like, you need to be back in the office. So I do feel lucky that Morgan Stanley has found a pretty good happy medium with that. But you know, Morgan Stanley has done a huge amount of research in terms of the actual economic benefits of having, you know, inclusivity and diversity and what that brings. And, you know, even looking back at doing the assessment center and being in a room of, you know, tackling a problem, like I saw your Lego room, I'm obsessed with Lego, you know, just having different people around a table and thinking about how their brain works and how they approach problems and what they bring to the table, and everybody brings something different. And when you literally have a room full of people who look the same, you're not getting that. And so they've done a lot of research papers to prove that. I feel very lucky. I don't feel all companies are like ours. And we have some, you know, pretty passionate senior women in technology at Morgan Stanley. But I do think it is getting better. It's just not moving as fast as we would like it to.
It's definitely one of the problems we have in Whitehall is that you have an echo chamber. You have a certain kind of individual who's come from a certain kind of educational background, and they say, what about this? And the other person who's had the identical upbringing says, what a brilliant idea. And then a third comes in with the same background and says, yes, it is. And you never get that diversity of perspective that allows for innovation and for different viewpoints and to come up with better solutions.
But even just the interview process, like we realized that when we would find amazing technologists who are women, there wasn't even a thought of, you know, they would go through, and Morgan, it's like, it's pretty intense. You go through a lot of interviews and, you know, just taking time to look at who was interviewing the person. And what we realized, and this was a couple of years ago, like probably about 5 years ago, you know, it's like Jane Smith comes for an interview and guess what? 5 men interview her. And so Jane Smith walks away and it's just like, I don't think that's a company that I want to work for. And we were, you know, it's like having people decline offers and then just changing that so that Jane Smith interviews 5 amazing female technologists and Jane's like, wow, that is a company that I want to work for. But just thinking about all of those touch points when you want to hire someone, how you retain staff, and the programs that you need to do to retain staff. And, you know, I really believe in the whole, you can't be what you can't see. And when you walk into a company and you don't see someone, it's the reason I ended up working for Morgan Stanley. I saw this really high energy, you know, woman with blonde hair at a stand, and I had no idea who Morgan Stanley was. I had no idea what an investment bank was. I had a Henry Hippo bank account and, you know, knew nothing about finance. And just because she looked like me, that's why I went to that stand. And so I really believe that that's important. Like representation really, really matters.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to ask you the $1 million question. AI, threat or opportunity?
I think it's a really exciting opportunity. You know, we have had a massive partnership with OpenAI for the past 5 years, and have been working with them really, really closely. You know, we obviously have a huge partnership with Microsoft as well. You know, I think that like anything, it needs to be regulated. There needs to be rules around it. We need to make sure that all of the large language models and how the data is organized, actually, you know, you need to have really good rules around making sure that it is representative of, you know, and inclusive of everybody. And so I think, you know, the thing that I love about Morgan Stanley is that we never sprint first. You know, we take time to learn and understand and make sure that we don't throw all our eggs in one basket. And so, I mean, when you think about banking and, you know, some of the things that we're doing right now with our wealth management business, like going into your Morgan Stanley app and just typing, you know, how many Yorkshire teas have I purchased this week, and being able to just instantly get an answer without going through an online statement. You know, I think it's really, really powerful. And I think it's really exciting. I think the hard part is, especially in the States, you know, some universities have banned it because they're worried about it. They're nervous how they, you know, plagiarism is, you know, something that, you know, universities worry about. And so what's happening, you know, they're banning it at the schools. And now again, the minority kids are suffering because the kids who have all the resources are going home and they have laptops and they have their parents' accounts and they're able to access that. And all of the kids who don't have the same opportunity are now missing out on it. So I do think it needs, like anything, it needs some rules for the road. But we're pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be pretty transformational.
I've had a couple of demonstrations of Copilot, which is Microsoft one, and it is extraordinary. And for teaching, amazing. You can input a lecture and then actually the system will be able to answer questions about that lecture for students.
It's amazing. Like if you look at my phone, my Morgan Stanley phone, which is like locked down, it's like so secure, it's crazy. But when you go into my, you know, calendar or my email and I bring up a calendar entry, it basically gives me a list of insights of everything that's related to that specific meeting and all the presentations that, you know, we've done on that topic and who was involved in it and when the last meeting was. Like it's really amazing how, you know, just some of the early stages of Copilot, you know, can change how you work and change how you do things. I don't know, like how many times have you been like, oh, I need to find that presentation, and you're like digging in your email for like, you know, 20, 30 minutes, you know. I think when it's used in the right way, it's going to be really powerful.
And I think banning it is just it's hopeless. You know, it's like trying to hold back water. It is there. I did a AI hackathon with Microsoft a couple of weeks ago for college students in GM region. And what we were doing was asking them to evaluate what prompts gave them better answers. And that's what's so interesting, is actually seeing the human input into that, and also the limitations. You know, we were sort of saying, imagine Greater Manchester, what's it going to look like in 2075? And the number of images that came up with the Shard or with London Bridge. And it's like, because, you know, if you look at a global large language system, it says Manchester, English City, London, and so you suddenly get the Shard in there. And that you could just see all the light bulbs going off, and you know, the creativity that they could actually input into AI was fantastic. And I think it's really frustrating when generative AI is taken to be AI, full stop. So there's so much for us to learn about it. Thank you very much for that. Now, I'm almost at the end of the questions. Yesterday, you received our Alumni Lifetime Achievement Award. Congratulations again. And I was particularly moved in your acceptance speech when you were talking about your mum and the influence that your mum had you. Can you say a little bit about how important your mum was to you, but also how important mothers are to girls growing up right now in today's society?
I mean, you know, people ask me where I get my grit from. I mean, my mom was a hustler, you know, in terms of how many things she juggled. And it's really funny, like, you know, you never appreciate what your parents do for you when you're a kid, because you're a kid, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to just be really angry at them about everything. And so, you know, she was a chef at a restaurant. She was part-time in the RUC in Northern Ireland, and she was a mom. And it's like, you forget about the fact, you know, she would, I want to show this to my daughter, so I'm not going to talk about Santa Claus and tooth fairies, but, you know, every event, every party, you know, she always had it under control, alongside doing 2 jobs. And, you know, when you kind of look back at that and have that as a role model, I mean, it's pretty intense. Both her and my dad, you know, just hustled. And so, you know, I think the values that, you know, she gave me in terms of, you know, just the work ethic. You know, I remember when I was younger and, you know, I wasn't really into Barbie dolls, but I was into the fact that I was trading them. And so understanding as an entrepreneur, I had my own little post office when I was like really, really young. It was this little kind of briefcase that like pulled out. And so I realized how much the post office and the town charged for stamps. And so I made flyers and I had my own little postal service in my hometown. And so I would go around like posting letters just so I could like get pocket money. And so that all had to come from somewhere, you know, the way my mind worked in terms of, you know, my mom said I was always obsessed with just like counting money and saving money. And so, and I ended up working at a bank, but yeah, just having you know, having two people who constantly were just trying to succeed, both her and my dad, you know, it definitely helped. And just having a working mom as well, and just seeing that that was okay, and that, you know, it was all right for her to go back to work after, you know, we had kind of grown up. It was pretty inspirational.
That's fantastic. Now, this is my final question. And it probably anticipates a question from the audience, and we're going to turn to the audience for questions next. What advice would you give to women, to people of color pursuing a career in tech or other male/white dominated industries?
I mean, I would say get an advocate. You know, the amount of people who have reached out to me on LinkedIn, I think sometimes you assume that people are really busy, but the amount of people who have reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, can I have like 15 minutes of your time? Or, you know, can I talk to someone from your team? Or here's my resume, can you review it for me? And they just assume that they're going to send it and it's just going to go into a dead hole. But I reply to every single person that connects with me. And it's pretty exhausting. But just having someone take the time, just like Frances took the time with me, just like my mentors took the time with me. You know, I think making sure that when you need help, that, you know, you ask for it. And I think making sure that you put yourself out there, you know, just in terms of, you know, networking with people. Like the amount of times I would have a coffee point conversation with someone about a specific thing, and then all of a sudden I was offered a role or an opportunity. So I think putting yourself out there. It's really hard sometimes. Like, you know, I have imposter syndrome. Like some of the people who got awards last night, I mean, they were pretty epic, you know, and pretty inspirational. And, you know, my husband sometimes always has to be the person that says, you know, you're the inspirational one, because you do get imposter syndrome. You're like, you know, it's kind of, you second guess yourself. So I think, you know, just having cheerleaders around you that basically kind of cheer you on when you're not ready to cheer yourself is really, really important. And also, you don't need to be great at everything. You know, I think when you want to get into technology, there's, you know, really easy, you know, thinking about developing web pages. I mean, Melinda is the poster child. She was working in distribution, and then woke up one morning and decided she wanted to become a computer programmer, and literally, you know, went on a course and taught herself programming, and is now a badass programmer. So, you know, I mean, I think some people are scared because they assume that technology is, you know, sitting in a corner, just coding every day, and that it will be really, really boring. And when we go through these programs with Girls Who Code, we explain to them the types of roles that you can do, like, you know, doing analytics and working with things like Tableau and Power BI. And there's amazing jobs out there, you know, basically doing data analytics and doing storytelling and doing product management or program management. You don't have to just be a developer, but just having a passion for technology. I don't think people really understand the roles. So I think my advice would be to find people who can just tell you about all of those roles and opportunities, because out of the 15 things they'll tell you, one of them is probably going to fit with you.
That's fantastic. I should say that Jeanette is our first International Industry Fellow. So when Jeanette goes back to New York, Francine and I will be working with Jeanette to talk about how she can help our students in the school. So we will be setting some online sessions for you. So you will see Jeanette again.
I'm excited.
Yes. All right. Can I ask members of the audience, do you have any questions? Go ahead.
I am a sort of graduate class of 2004. We were the final year of a MLMS course of modern languages and marketing. I work in industrial manufacturing now, obviously heavily white male dominated. I work for a German organisation, and been there about 9 months. This month their Women's Network group celebrated its first anniversary. The company of 5,000 people, and I, like you, am really compelled to be the change I want to see. So I am very active about diversity, equality, inclusion, on like that, and within the organisations. I've plugged myself into the leadership group for that. But we really have to move the needle in terms of the expectations of this business. I'm finding that working for a German organisation, they're at least 10 years behind where we are in DE&I. They think it's okay to set a quota for women in the management team. And we have this women's network that even with the year old, it still doesn't allow men to be part of it. And I don't know how to build the advocacy. So I really need to give them a little bit of a wake up in that respect. Do you have any ideas for me?
So I'm just going to summarize that question with some fascinating background. But the question is really, what steps can you take to really move the dial when you're in a situation where you've got a very traditional company, a traditional culture, and what is it that anyone can do to really drive the needle and affect a step change? Are you happy I've got that? Great.
So I think in companies like that, and I actually have a good amount of friends who I've met through panels and things who are in similar industries like this. And I think, taking the approach that I took in Morgan Stanley, which was pretty bullish and, pretty aggressive, probably won't work in that scenario. And so some of the things that, I think one of the best things to do is to really find someone in that company who is male, who's respected, who people listen to, and really spend time with him and befriend him. Ask him to be your mentor, start talking to him about the challenges, ask for his advocacy, ask for his help, and then basically have him become the first, women in industry fellow or whatever you want to call it. I think it's really important to get one person who has a voice that people respect and trust, because, if you kind of just do all of these things that are in their face, it will kind of push them away. And so there's definitely been times where, even in Morgan Stanley, we've wanted to do things and we've had resistance. And when we started our allyship program, it really changed a lot, having them come to events, having them come to awards, made them feel like they were part of it and made them not feel threatened by it. And so I think it's better to kind of bring them along and include them, have them do talks. Like, people love talking and people, love feeling good about themselves. So, sometimes it's good to bruise their ego, to make them feel that you need them, rather than kind of dragging them along. And so, I definitely have done both of those things. And I've definitely found, with the male allies in our company, when we appeal to their ego and their knowledge and how they can help us, it definitely helps a lot more.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I must say I'm studying MSc in Financial Technology in Salford. I just wanted to ask a few questions to our amazing guest. One is, currently under your leadership, who do you consider your stiffest competitors? And what are the initiatives or strategies you are currently driving from the leadership to remain ahead of the competition?
I'm just going to summarize that and then we'll come back to another question. So this is about who is your stiffest competition and what kind of strategies and initiatives are you endorsing, taking steps towards in order to maintain your place?
Okay, so I might not tell you who the competitors are, so I might get in trouble. I think everybody, if you just Google, you will find them. There are other investment banks in the United States. We're a really competitive bank, and it was funny, I was comparing our competitor. It's like Man U versus Man City. It's like we're always going head to head. There's always a really passionate rivalry between us. But the one thing we're not rivals on is diversity and inclusion, and that's the one topic the two banks come together and we partner a lot with each other. I think there are multiple things. So in my area, so I run data and analytics infrastructure. So that's pretty much every single technology that you can think of, from data containers to data middleware to how we transport data, to how we do analytics on data. It's about an organization of 1,000 people, running the infrastructure for the entire firm. And, I think we're working with a lot of cloud is a big technology that we're leveraging right now. And we have multiple cloud service providers that we use. And so we're really heavily investing in some of the newer cloud technology, which is really exciting because when you have things like if you think about tax season or, you know, a specific time of the year when everybody is going to be logging into our portals or everybody is going to want to use our systems, you know, how do you scale up and scale down without having to have all of that infrastructure in our own data centers? And so we're spending a lot of time looking at the use cases where it makes sense to have a cloud vendor relationship. But we're also heavily investing in our own private cloud strategy, and we own a lot of our own data centers all over the world. Analytics is a huge one. So, you know, you think about AI and you think about, you know, nothing can happen in AI without data. So I have a lot of job security right now. And so we're spending a huge amount of time with all of the AI vendors, you know, coming together. We're putting governance, you know, and processes in place to make sure that, you know, we're never going to be, Morgan Stanley's never going to be, you know, a company that uses an external AI data source. Like it's going to be in our data centers with our own data and it's secured. So it's how do we do that and still get the benefits of, you know, kind of using data sources outside of the firm. So, you know, I think those are the two most exciting things that, you know, we're really working on right now.
Fantastic.
Okay, so my final question to her is, I'm imagining how huge, how exhausting your responsibilities are. How do you strike a balance by being a powerful leader in the world, by being a mom, by being a partner?
You're going to make me cry now.
Where is the sweet spot with all of this? How do you strike a balance?
So this is that wonderful question about achieving a work-life balance. How is it you manage to be a powerful professional leader, a mom, a wife, and actually have a life at the same time?
So I don't believe you ever have balance. I don't believe in work-life balance at all. It never works. It's a complete falsehood. What I believe in is at any one point you have to prioritize and choose what's most important to you at the time. And so there are times, you know, everybody in my company knows that anything that ever happens to a family member or a friend, someone goes into hospital, someone's going through a divorce, someone needs me, my phone is down and I'm out, and they know that I'm probably going to be uncontactable. But the times that I'm there, I'm literally there 24/7 and people can contact me. So it definitely, it's creating an understanding in the company of what your limits are and where those lines are. Like something happens to Amelia and I have to, that's my daughter, and I have to like leave the office. It's like, I don't even think about work because in my list of priorities, her health or my family's health is literally at the top. But, you know, missing a family wedding, which also is probably not a bad thing sometimes, using work as an excuse. I've definitely probably done that. You know, I think that there have been parts of my career, you know, that I talked about before, which I definitely want to repeat. I'm not an alcoholic. I was a workaholic. You know, I really did put a huge amount, and it wasn't to get promoted. I just genuinely, like Melinda will tell you, I just loved it. Like I loved every second of it. And my husband, when he first met me, he was like, I think someone needs to do a study on you because I don't understand how someone can wake up and just be that excited about work every day. And I genuinely feel like it's just because I feel so lucky that I work at this company, and I feel so lucky that I have this job and I have the opportunity. And so every day when I wake up, you know, I feel really excited to be there. You know, and so when I kind of look at when I worked way too much, it really took having my daughter. It wasn't even having a relationship, it was really having my daughter, because up until I had my daughter, you know, that was in 2015, and I'd been with Morgan Stanley, so that was 15 years. I really had never taken a true vacation. I was always, my phone was always on, you know, sometimes my husband would make me put it in the safe in a hotel. But really up until I had her, I didn't understand what it was to disconnect. And I mean, completely disconnect. And then I had her, And I remember, so not to get too personal, but I'm literally just about to give birth to my daughter, and I say to my husband, oh my God, it was back when I had a BlackBerry. Give me my BlackBerry. And he's like, are you kidding me? He was like, you're about to like give birth to our daughter. And I said, no, people just need to know, you know, where I am. Like I went to leave her early, and I was like, I'm supposed to be presenting something. I was like, they need to understand where I am. And so I think he assumed, and everybody in work assumed, that once I had my daughter, I would just be the same. And I was completely the opposite, because all of a sudden we only get 4 months in America, which in America is amazing because it's normally 6 weeks. And so once I had her, the phone went in a drawer, and, you know, I realized that life goes on without me, that everybody that works for me stepped up and, you know, can basically be empowered to do a job, and I don't need to be involved in everything. And it completely changed my management style, because I came back and I was just like, oh, all these people were doing what I was doing. I don't need to be in the weeds with it anymore. I need to trust them more, and I need to empower them more. And so I think honestly, having her was life-changing for me, because it wasn't healthy the way I was working. And, you know, I think it was, I feel really lucky that I ended up changing how I work, because I really think it helped the people that were working for me as well. I'm sorry, that was a really long answer to your question.
I don't think we can underestimate the importance of an environment that fosters trust and empowerment. I think that's really the job of every leader. Paul, I'm mindful of time. Are there any questions from our online audience?
Yeah, we do have a really nice one. The lady who claims that she knows less than the people that she needs to hire to make an idea happen. What advice do you have for her? And also, can you recommend any books, forums, or any groups that she can get involved with?
Jeanette, did you catch that? Can you summarize?
Not the only Lord.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. The lady claims that she knows less than the people who she needs to hire.
Okay.
Business becoming.
All right.
What advice?
Okay.
So this is about if you are hiring people and you don't know, perhaps that's not your area of expertise, how do you make good decisions? What advice do you have? Are there any resources that you would direct them to?
This is a great question, because basically, so I ran all of data and analytics and web services on the services side. So it was really all about operations and operational support and managing it. And in January of this year, my boss stepped up to take over all of enterprise computing, and she was running data and analytics engineering. And so basically all of her department came under me. And so I'd managed engineers before, and, you know, in a small group. This was the first time, you know, that I was managing, you know, people who were considered designated engineers, like the smartest people in the industry from an engineering and technical standpoint. And so it's easy to kind of look at that and feel intimidated. But again, it goes back to mentorship. Like I remember my mentor said to me, you know, you're going to have people working for you that know a lot more than you about that specific thing. And I was really intimidated thinking about, you know, taking some of these people as direct reports of mine, because just, I mean, from an engineering standpoint, some of them were like the best in the industry. And the first one-to-one, you know, the first kind of meeting I had with them, I just was really bold. And I said to all of them, I said, look, we pay you guys to be the best engineers. I'm not going to know everything that you know. You know, there's going to be things that you have to teach me, but here's all the things, going back to the bag of tricks, here's all the things that I'm going to help you with. Here's how I'm going to make your day easier. And you're going to have to help support me while I get up to speed with all of the things that you're designing and building. And so just getting that out there, you know, from the onset, rather than me feeling insecure that, you know, I didn't know everything that they knew, and them kind of grumbling that they're reporting into someone who, you know, isn't as technical as them, you know, just getting it out of the way took the pressure off everybody. And now they're actually like my favorite people to work with. So I think, you know, it can be intimidating. I think that, you know, she asked about books and resources and things. And I mean, there's like a laundry list depending on the topic, but, you know, I would to build a bond with them and to build a relationship with them, we would pick a topic each week and I would have them, you know, teach me about what they do. And so it's really about getting to know the people and building that rapport and then showing them how you can add value to what they're, you know, really doing day to day.
That's fantastic. It has come time, we're going to disperse outside for refreshments and canapes, but please let me thank Jeanette Gamble for some fantastic and insightful words.
Ask a favor for everybody because it's kind of the thing that I always do, but and you can like get out of the photo if you don't want to, but I always take a selfie when I do panels so that I can post it on LinkedIn.
So while you're organizing that, can I also say a big thank you to the entire alumni team for organizing yesterday's alumni event, but also tonight's event. Thank you so much to everybody. Pradeep, I don't know, Pradeep is going to sign us off,
Oh,
but
sorry.
no. Okay, yes,
Yeah,
Pradeep, and then we'll do selfies.
Wow, what an inspirational conversation that really was, and I just wanted to sort of say so much I've learnt from just that kind of short interaction that you've had. So thank you for sharing your insights and some of them quite personal as well. I think, you know, that's a hard thing to do in front of an audience like this. So thank you for that. But there are just a few takeaways from me. I'm just making a few notes in terms of, you know, some of the learning points. We like to have learning points, don't we, Janice?
Yes.
At the end of a session. And I've taken away a few things here. I think the importance of networking. I think, you know, I think you've demonstrated the power of that so well this evening. The importance of mentorship. And I was going to ask you about whether you still have a mentor, whether you still seek mentorship, even though you are the managing director. And I think that's
2 mentors who I meet with on a regular basis.
Yeah, brilliant. I love the bag of tricks analogy, and you know, you've all got to think about your own bag of tricks that you have and what's missing from your bag of tricks that you need to move forward. I love the point about the economic benefits of inclusivity and diversity, and I'd love to see some of those reports that that you have at Morgan Stanley around that. And finally, I think it's so clear and so obvious that you enjoy what you do, and that to me is absolutely amazing. So I think that the learning point from that is if you can find something that you really, really enjoy, you will be the managing director. So the other final point I've kind of learned is, Janice, have you ever thought about doing a podcast?
Yeah, Jan.
Such a fantastic host. Can we give a round of applause for Janice for such a round of applause for Janice for doing such a brilliant job in hosting that. And once again, thank you to you all. Thank you to our tech team who kind of kept things moving today. Done a great job. Thank you to everyone online who've been engaging and listening and asking questions. So I think without further ado, I think we now have refreshments and canapes back in the Albert Adams room. And if you want to have further conversation with Jeanette, I'm sure she'll be up for a bit of that.
Jeanette does have some Morgan Stanley goodies to give out to the students in the room.
Yeah, there's some at the back.
Brilliant. And Jeanette wants to take a selfie, so.
I'll try and like, okay.